engineers out there who built these things, who might even be listening tonight, but come on and stand up and tell us whether it can or it can't. And if they say, no, you can't do it, it wouldn't happen like that, well then, I'm going to be worried. I've got to start asking more questions. But that's my starting point, you see, and it just seems logical to me to ask that question.
Yeah,
because this guy who's talking about all this, he's a theologian, this American bloke. He's not an engineer. You know, I'm not really going to take it from him. I'll take it from a structural engineer who says, here is what my qualifications are. You can look me up on the internet. I've built so many skyscrapers, and I tell you, that can't happen, or I tell you it can. You know, it's just so frustrating. Occasionally you get a question which actually should be able to be answered by the appropriate specialist.
I suspect, because we're dealing with something which has got more facets than we truly know, we're going to find imponderables all the way around this. But there were some coincidences that really were remarkable, that stood out, in particular George Bush his face was captured by the photographer immediately as he was told. So why did the guy take the picture then?
I do remember. Well, it was actually when I saw it on the television. It was wasn't just a photograph. I actually saw the footage of it where they were taking it with a video cam. You know, an actual film camera was taking it. So I saw it in live time not live time, but I saw the recording of it. It was in the classroom, sitting there, and then the Secret Service agent comes up and whispers in his ear, and they show it, then they pan to the front. They showed his face from the front. And I thought that was odd. It wasn't just a photograph, it was an actual film as well.
It looked to me interesting that his chair was pointing away from the rest of the furniture and people sitting in the room. It was pointed towards where the camera was, so that there was an uninterrupted shot of his reaction.
Yeah. Well, it's rather like, you see, one has to make one's mind up about these things. This Kennedy business, without wishing to move it on, what convinced me about that Kennedy couldn't have been shot by Oswald was just, when I actually looked into it and I read all the evidence and everything, it was just the fact that you just can't do that much. One bullet can't do that much, you know, and it just wasn't going to happen that way.
It wasn't a very heavy caliber gun, was it? I think.
Well, I just think also that the guy's head came off. When you look at the picture, it's horrible to say, but his head went back and he sort of came off from the front, a bit of his skull. It just wasn't. He was shot from the front. I'm convinced of it, and so many witnesses were there saying they heard shooting and smoke along that picket line fence, and I thought, okay, you don't get dozens and dozens of those witnesses who then all start mysteriously dying. I can buy that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I can buy the fact that the CIA and the Mafia colluded, and they got him. I can buy that. But when this guy comes on and he says, I'm telling you that structural steel can't do that. I want him, that was the essence of his argument. He kept coming back to it. He said, I don't need to say anything else. I don't need to worry about the president's face on television or all this other stuff. I just tell you that's a fact. And once you've got that fact in your skull, then you know there's been a conspiracy because somebody else had to blow the other steel away. Well, let's test it. Let's get structural engineers on. Let's talk sport, get some hold of some building engineers, and let's ask them that question.
Do you want to leave me your web address or what?
Yeah. I mean, well, I'll keep listening. I wish I could give you the answer, but it just seems so frustrating, you know.
So what do you do for a living?
I'm a surveyor, but I'm
right.
Commercial property and valuation. I'm not a structural engineer.
So in recent times, has the value of commercial property gone up? Or because broadly?
Yeah, it's not like residential. It hasn't gone up as hotly as that.
No.
But it has, well, investments stuff that's income producing has gone up steeply. Stuff that's vacant, where you let it or people buy it as owner-occupiers, has been pretty steady.
Because I was reading an article in the paper within the last 3 or 4 days talking about people using commercial property as an investment.
Yes, oh yes. Yes, that's widened. A lot more people have moved into that from that residential buy-to-let market, which is a bit played out.
Yeah, I could see that coming, actually, because some of they were looking at, I mean, when you take in mind the national average pay for an adult, it's about 23,000 a year, and a national average. Obviously, there's going to be peaks and troughs. So, but they were looking at one-bedroom properties about £300 a week. Yeah, yeah. Which was never going to last, surely.
No, I don't think it will. I think that bubble has slightly burst anyway. And the commercial bubble could also burst. So I think a lot of people are getting into that and buying shops and these sort of things when they don't really understand the fundamentals of what they're doing. They're just going to the auction room and buying them. And some of them are lucky and some of them won't be so lucky.
Working on the theory that if you throw enough of certain substances against the wall, some will stick.
Well, that's what they're working on, but they don't all have that much money.
No.
That's the problem.
Of course, how much... And you can, we make the shows on television and it covers everything from the colour of the bathroom towels to the front door,
Yeah.
So what I'm really making the point here is that we've got plenty of instruction as to how to present properties if we're going to sell them, if they're homes, dwellings. How important is that when you're talking about selling commercial property?
Well, it depends what it is. If it's a shop, people tend to, when you've got a vacant shop, they tend to do their own shop fitting anyway, so just try and leave it structurally sound and clean. Maybe put some paint on the walls, but don't try and guess what the next retailer is going to do, because everybody's shop fit is different. If it's an office, you can pretty well guess what people want, depending whereabouts it is. If it's an industrial, you're in pretty shell condition anyway. It's like concrete on the floor and pretty basic walls and exposed ceilings anyway. So with commercial, it depends what you're talking about.
Right. So if I were thinking about investing in a shop...
Yes.
I'd have to take on board all that you've said and expand my thinking to thinking about, is this in a popular thoroughfare? I think the expression's footfall, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
So
yeah. Who's likely to lease it? Can I improve the planning on it? Maybe I can get a restaurant use on it or something, which will generally be more valuable. If you're buying a shop, take a tip from me, try and get a corner shop with a return frontage. They're always good.
Right.
I mean, okay, not necessarily if you buy in the wrong area, but it's always better to be on the corner than in the middle terrace. So for small little single shop units, anyone out there listening, if you want to buy something, try and buy a corner shop. They tend to trade better because the visibility of them as you're walking or driving past is so much greater.
How, at present, because I realise you're not in the psychic business, how easy is it to sell them on? If you've got one or two and you've had them for 3 or 4 years and you're thinking, well, I'll just start to get out of this and get into something else.
Yeah, if they're investments, it depends. You see, if you buy something which has got maybe 8 years income left on it and you wait 3 or 4 years, well, it's only got 4 years income left, so people might start to get a bit nervous about, well, what's going to happen at the end of the lease? Is the guy going to stay? Am I going to have what we call a void, where you can't rent it for a while, or for a long period, depending what the market's like and where you are? If you've got sort of like a 20-year lease, you bought a long lease and you've waited 3 or 4 years, fine, yeah, you can sell it on at the moment because the investment market's very strong. And how much you sell it on for is a factor of how financially strong the tenant is. But it's not a game. I mean, when you're buying any kind of investment, or even selling any kind of investment, you do need advice because there's so many different variables. It's not like residential. It's more complicated. Even little shops, there's complicated little bits of kit.
Yeah, well, that's why I took advantage of the situation and asked you as a professional how it's sat, because it was quite a positive article making the point that retail units haven't progressed quite as aggressively in terms of price market, so there's probably still room for a wise investment there.
Well, there is, but it depends. I think what they might... You've got to define what they're talking about. If they're talking about rents and saying rents haven't risen that fast because consumer spending's been a bit under pressure with Gordon Brown and everything else taxing us to death, well, that's probably true, particularly in secondary shops. If they're saying the income-producing stuff, the investment market hasn't marched on, well, it has, because interest rates have been low, and that's created a bit of a boom in the investment market. So if I were... For all those listeners who've been good enough to listen to me ranting on for the last 5 minutes, a little bit of advice is I'd just be a bit careful about buying income in the auction at the moment, what we call investments. Mm-hmm. If you can you find a little vacant shop, maybe upper parts, and you get a good deal on it, that's a different thing because then you're creating something. But I'd be a little bit cautious at the moment. I think the investment market could be turning soon, and that could mean that some people will lose some money. I'd just keep my powder a little bit dry.
Yes, I didn't want to keep you on the line, but
no, not at all. I'm delighted.
I was just thinking when you mentioned about accommodation upstairs, and so when you're buying it, you know, I would imagine it would be in everyone's best interest if you had a combined deal, so you could have accommodation upstairs.
Yes, what often happens is the upstairs is sold off on long leases already.
Mm-hmm.
So you're the freeholder, you buy the shop, which maybe let's say for the sake of argument is vacant.
And that should give you 10 quid a year. That should give you 10 quid a year in land rent, shouldn't it?
Well, that's right. That couldn't be more aggravation than it's worth.
Yeah.
You see? And again, a lot of people don't realise that, Alan, because then the flat owner's knocking on you saying, "What about this insurance? But what about the roof leak and all that?" You know. You know, it's their property. They've got to be careful. This is why I say people need to be advised properly. That's my best bit of advice. Get some advice.
Very well put. It's good to talk to you, Adam. Give us a call in a day or two or something, because you make good sense. So I'll bring up another question for you.
Okay, I'll give you a buzz.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care. Good night. talkSPORT 10:53, 10:89 a.m. It's Mike Allen for Ian Collins and Chesney. Just having a break for a few days. If you'd like to be part of the programme, I'd like to talk to you. We've got all sorts of things up for discussion. It's 08704 20 20 20, or text 81089, or email talksport.net. We're talking about English wine. Yeah, I've saved something for you, actually. Yeah. Do you remember Star Trek? Star Trek from the 60s. I've got an amazing story for you about Star Trek in just a moment. If you've got some fond memories of Star Trek, now will be a good time to call me, because I'd like to talk to you about that, okay? 08704 20 20 20. This is talkSPORT. I wasted all my time reading in comics, American comics, and that's probably why I wasn't aware that John Pilger has written a book on 9/11. This is a message from Beth in Stevenage. So back to an earlier caller who said, wouldn't it be good if John Pilger did a book on 9/11? Apparently he has. It's called The New Rulers of the World. And Beth in Stevenage says it's very good and it agrees completely with the conspiracy theory. No. Now, the guys that were James Wales guests earlier this evening have just put Loose Change 2, the new edition. It's available on Google Video, and anyone watches it, according to Peter James, is in Brighton, will have their eyes opened. Well, Peach. Yeah, I used to work with a guy called Peter James. That's what we used to call him, Peach. So that's your new name now, Peter. Very interesting. Very interesting. But I don't really want you to go to Google now. I want you to stay with me. Yes, I need to talk to you. Let me tell you about this great news. Or is it? Is it the beginning of the end? Star Trek, you know, was the creation of Gene Roddenberry, and it ran 79 episodes, and it was broadcast between 66 and 69. It was cancelled after 3 series because it was a ratings failure, but it gained mass appeal when it was syndicated to other networks. Right. It's been listed in Guinness World Records for having the most number of spin-offs, 10 films and 5 television series, and William Shatner as Captain Kirk and Nichelle Nichols as Lieutenant Uhura made history with the first interracial kiss on US network television. There's a first. I bet Mother was impressed. So what they've done, they've looked at the original Star Trek and they said, the interior shots are okay. That's all right if you don't mind a bit of wobbling. But the exterior has been completely revived. Yes, they've given it a makeover. All those original stuff. So with the dodgy aliens, you know, with the plasticine on their face and half a pound of nylon around their chin or something like that, whatever it was, we all knew that there was a weak spot, and that was really down to the visuals from the exterior of the spacecraft. So they reorganised it in special, enhanced, computer-generated intelligence. I'm so impressed with that idea. What I need to know is, does it spoil Star Trek a little bit? Because it was just the fact that the models of other planets and things were just a little bit tacky, and there was always the same rocks. Invariably, when someone was beamed down, it always seemed to look like somewhere in California. But we stayed with it because we enjoyed it and it was preposterous. But it was preposterous in a way that gave it a bit of edge, because it looked a bit, Heath Robinson. You can't say that about an American thing because it's an English expression, but we all knew what it was, a sketch, really, and we were just seeing someone's rough idea of something. What we were really looking at, I would suggest, is the story within a story. That, I think, would have been very, very interesting if they'd have stayed true to that. But maybe they went off a message a little bit. But I don't think Gene Roddenberry would be too surprised if they came up with this version. Well, they are going to do it, actually. It's on release in America. So, let's pull up Catherine, who's in London. Let's have a chat with us. Hello, Catherine. You're on talkSPORT.
Hello, Mike. It's I was telling your
my man.
Your man, your phone man, or your producer. I don't know what he is.
He does everything.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Oh, lucky.
He made me a cup of coffee tonight.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Top man.
Is it the right colour?
It's all right, actually. It's the hippest car colour in the country at the moment.
I was just telling him that I haven't finished this book yet. I got it about 3 or 4 months ago. It's called 9/11 Revealed.
Oh, I had the writer on tonight.
Ian Henschel and Roland Morgan.
No, that's not the...
They're the two authors, Ian Henschel and Roland Morgan.
Roland Morgan, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Because I've only just been coming in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, we had Roland Morgan and spoke personally. We did. We would have spoken a bit more, but the battery on his phone went a bit thwarpence.
I think I heard the end of that. I think I heard that. Yes, it was quite odd.
Yeah.
I heard the end of that call.
You see, there's something about it that made us think that maybe he's the victim of a conspiracy theory himself, that nobody wants him to talk.
Well, I haven't read it all. I told your chap. I haven't read it all because it's quite a lot to absorb. It's
You can't read it quickly, can you?
No, it's. Have you seen it, Mike?
Seen it? I've got one sitting next to me.
Have you? Well,
Yeah.
it's just when I first saw the dreadful day, the collapse of the towers, I just thought, I've seen demolition workers do that to buildings where they don't go sideways or backwards or forwards; they just drop on their base.
Yes.
And as this book says, Michael Taylor, a demolition contractor from Pennsylvania, told the New Scientist the collapse of the World Trade Towers looked like a classic controlled demolition.
We were talking about this actually off air, and I didn't want to say anything at the time because I thought it might be considered a bit insensitive, but we thought, looking at that sequence of images, that it could easily have been affected by charges.
Well, that's what the other chap, Van Romero, is a vice president of research at New Mexico Institute of Mining, and he said that when he, in my opinion, it says, based on the videotapes, that after the airplanes hit the buildings, there were explosive devices because that's the only way you could bring a building down like that, and they came down within about 20 seconds.
Was it? I thought it was a bit longer than that.
Well, that's what the authors, the two authors of this book said. Do you know something, Mike? Something that's been bothering me. I saw a lady interviewed today who lost her darling son, who was working in one of the towers in America. I mean, I don't know her name because I can't remember it. I wouldn't tell it if I could remember it either.
No, it's probably better not.
But she was interviewed here. I think she was outside the American embassy here. It looked like it anyway. And the interviewer said to her, "How do you feel in hindsight? Could you have what would you have said in hindsight?" And she said, "I wished he'd have been warned, even if it wasn't that day, not to go in the office." And I thought that was a bit odd.
I wish he could have been warned.
Yes, even if it wasn't that day, if it was another day, that he could have been warned not to go in. And I thought that was odd, and I phoned a few friends and said, "Did you hear that on lunch? Did you see that at lunchtime?" And they didn't. It was ITV, and I thought, they didn't comment, the presenter didn't comment on it, he just said, "Well, thank you for your..."
Yes, he's like me, he's thinking, hang on, are we going to put this out? Oh, yes, we're going to put it out, it's okay, because we haven't named anybody.
Well, it was a piece to camera, it was live, it was,
yeah.
I know they still could have, they've got time to not put it out, but it was a live piece of camera. I think it was in the front of the American embassy, and I thought, what did she mean by that? Warned not to go in. She said, even if it wasn't that day, he could have been warned not to go in if they were. She almost said, if were suspicious. She almost said that. I wished I'd written down what she actually said. But it's bothered me all day, and I've asked other people, they didn't see the lunchtime news.
No, I was trying to go to sleep, actually. I woke up at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, and I thought, I'm going to be sitting up all night here. So there I was, frantically trying to get to sleep by lunchtime.
That's because you can't do it. You can't persevere. It's like you can't store sleep. You can't persevere and make yourself go to sleep.
Yeah, and you can't grow talent, can you? But you can grow your fingernails.
Well, listen, Mike, I'm glad you've got the book in front of you anyway. Because
yeah, I tell you what, I think we might. Excuse me a minute. We might be slightly at cross purposes. He did write 9/11.
9/11 Revealed.
That's right.
Challenging the facts behind the war on terror.
This is his new book, Flight 93 Revealed.
Ah. Somebody was talking to me about that in Books, etc. today.
Yeah, so Flight 9/11 Revealed preceded this. This is the latest one.
Yeah, this was last summer this was written. This was published.
And he wrote this by himself.
Ah.
Roland Morgan.
Well,
it's very, very, very... I mean, this was the... He's talking about Flight 93. He says this was the last 9/11 flight. Why wasn't the Air Force alerted in time?
Yes.
The plane crashed so hard it disappeared into the ground, but what are the debris found over 8 miles away? And the 9/11 Commission says 13 cell phone calls were made or received on board, but cell phones don't work at normal altitude. Now, I don't understand that.
Neither do I.
Normal altitude. What is that?
But what about United Air Flights 93, which had been delayed, took off from Newark, New Jersey at around 8:42?
This is Flight 93, yeah.
But it crashed on its way to... Well, you see, when that happened, the day after that happened, a friend of mine in the police force said that was brought down.
Yes, I was talking to him about it, and...
and what about into the Pentagon? It went into the piece that's just been renovated with nobody in there.
Well, it's just been renovated, but it had... they didn't do any... Did they do any shots of the... They did, they were...
Well, they said it was like a missile, Mike, that went through that building, and I mean...
Because I'm trying desperately to remember back 5 years, and I seem to recall that they were talking... It was one segment, wasn't it? One segment width, because it's 5-sided, the Pentagon, isn't it? That's why it's called a Pentagon. And there was one segment had been hit, and there was a sign of a hole, but they wouldn't have any close-up filming. They wouldn't allow it.
No, and they said it was the penetration, the size of the penetration was like a missile, the size of a missile.
So a
but
missile.
There was no debris either, Mike.
Yeah.
And if there was, nobody saw it.
Well, there was debris in as much as there was a big hole in the building, wasn't there?
No, but they're saying debris, the pieces from the plane.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And we haven't heard anything about that anyway, have we, about the people that were in that part of the building?
As far as I can recall, there wasn't anybody reported harmed.
No. I just find it odd. The oddest thing was the collapse. I looked at it, and I don't know anything about buildings, but I thought, I wonder why it didn't go sideways. I wonder why it just came straight down in its base. Did you know another building came down that wasn't even hit by a plane? Another large building next door.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was that was the number 7, wasn't it?
A large office block, wasn't it?
Yes.
And that came down in the same way as well.
Yeah.
I just found it all very odd.
Well, I think because they've got so many towers in their construction, and they're so close together, they have to have part of the design brief a situation where they collapse, so that there is if it's going to come down, it's going to come down that way, and it won't fall.
But they weren't made to, the towers weren't made to come down like that.
I think they're fine, they were, because don't forget, they went up in the 70s, didn't they?
Oh, they said that they tried it with a 747, the structure, in this book. Not the one you've got now, not the new one, this one. Reduced to rubble in 20 seconds. The experts can't believe it says here. No explanation for the collapse.
Unless it had a series of wide explosions that were integrated in the construction of it.
What, that they didn't tell anybody about?
Yeah, that was, you know, here's the way it's going to fall.
Yeah.
It determines that.
Well...
Because if you're going to knock a building and it's designed to fall down like a well-ordered pack of cards, and virtually on its own base, there's got to be something that drives that compression at a preordained time. So perhaps it was built with a destruction option from the outset.
It says, Mike, the pancake theory implies that the fire was much worse than any office fire the architects could have expected. The building was, however, designed with high tolerance to fire, as it was recognised that evacuation would take an exceptionally long time. Do you know, some friends of mine, it takes 50 minutes to evacuate Scotland Yard down the staircase.
15?
50. It's a long time,
really?
isn't it? Yeah.
That's not that tall.
No, but it still takes 50 minutes.
50 minutes?
Because I know someone that was sitting with me when they had a fire drill on one occasion, and he phoned through to see if they were opening, going back in again, and it was 50 minutes. It's too long, really, isn't it?
I would have thought so. But then, we haven't actually spent any time wondering what would it be like, have we? Until 5 years ago yesterday.
Well, when I moved in here, my cousin said, "Oh, good," she said, "you're only on the first floor, you can jump out the window from here."
As if you would.
I wouldn't fancy it.
No, certainly not.
Well, listen, Mike, I'm glad I caught you.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I don't want you to leave town. Put the radio back on, because Paul's called us on his way to Cardiff, and he's going to tell us why the tower's collapsed.
Oh, right.
So,
is he a demolition man?
I don't know. He might be an engine driver.
Oh. I'll have a listen.
Okay,
nice
thanks for the call.
You, Mike.
Have a nice night. Goodbye. talkSPORT, it's Mike Allen for Ian Collins. Got the screen to work that time, you see. All you need is about £3 worth of talent and you can do anything. Hello, Paul.
Hello, mate. I just offering an explanation to it. There was a programme on about 2 years ago, I think it was on either Channel 4 or one of the BBCs, and they were basically explaining how the towers could have gone down. It was basically the way they were built. The outside, were all like different steel structures, where they all pieces of steel, like a jigsaw, built all the way up. And the inside of the floors, they explained, were basically not as such a high temper steel, but that wouldn't stand so much heat, and they were covered in like a foam. And with air fuel,